things that's always baffled me, particularly in the story of Harry and Meghan, is their, well, continual untruths, to put it politely. You see, when you think about it, their story has been built, as so many stories have, on, well, not the truth. Even in New York this week, that we saw Meghan once again literally being electrified by the fact that she was apparently one of the most 100 influential people in the world, when we truly all know, and even she must know, that is not the case. But you see, even looking back at further stories, cast your mind back to when they very first met the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. If you remember, Meghan famously grabbed the headlines by basically saying that she was stunned. You know, they came over sort of unexpected. They were very formal and she was informally dressed in ripped jeans and just a white shirt. A lot of detail as well, barefoot, you know, that sort of stuff. And what happened, of course, was Harry had already tipped them off about the fact that he was dating their favourite actress, out of anybody in the world, their favourite actress, and suddenly, you know, they couldn't believe it. Get away. No, apparently there was even an expletive from Prince William. Always really hard to believe these particular stories, right? And then really what happened was, according to Harry, and it's detailed in his book Spare, they were absolutely thrilled to meet Meghan Markle, and apparently she got on quite well with them. The true story, as I told you previously, was Harry had already prepped them by giving them a highlights video of just Meghan's scenes from Suits. So they had no idea about anybody else. The show wasn't one of their favourite shows. They didn't know anything. And just to clarify this, to give you an idea of the sort of programme that Catherine enjoys, it's escapism, like many of us. And the thing is, Suits is a well-produced drama, but she kind of liked things more closer to home. You see, when she went to see that wonderful behind-the-scenes making of Downton Abbey, if you remember, she was so excited meeting the cast members, you know, and who could blame her? Mrs. Patmore, you know, all of those people, just, you could see she knew who they were and the characters they played, and she was absolutely engrossed in that particular story. What happened, which was fascinating later on, and this was basically during the now infamous spectacle that was the royal wedding for Harry and Meghan. Well, you see, as we now know, there were no members of Meghan's family allowed to attend because, well, apparently they'd been disinvited. If you remember, her one and only sort of family member, well, no, she couldn't come. They'd had word from the palace. Empty pew upon empty pew, but, you know, this woman believed that story from Meghan Markle, as I pointed out before. What a tissue of lies. The only person allowed to attend was Doria. But what's fascinating is, behind the scenes, even more so, is this particular story. And this is part of what I wanted to share with you in today's By Royal Appointment. We've seen the smiles, we've seen the, you know, rictus grin reappear back in New York. Well, from Meghan Markle, not necessarily, of course, Prince Harry. Yes, on that other outtake video, he's performing very much so because he knows there's a camera there. He knows that he has to project happiness because, quite frankly, what is he now being left with? Ostracised from his own family. Seemingly, on a recent visit to London, there were no friends that wanted to hook up or indeed get back together as he had hoped. And he does look a lot happier, you have to be honest, when he's on his own, right? You can see that when she's not part of the Invictus Games, he relaxes. The whole room becomes a lot easier to deal with. But what's fascinating is they're now literally at a crisis point. And I know this from an excellent source that, you see, Harry and Meghan are now on totally different paths. She wants a totally different life to what he had planned. She'd always wanted this life. She just didn't really know how to work at it until she had the power, prestige, and more importantly, the money. I mean, be blunt, would anybody from Time magazine have ever been interested in her? Vanity Fair, you know, even the ex-editor came out and said she's in her own reality, and this is many years after working with her. If that was the impression that he had at the very beginning, before she'd gone through the spectacle of her short time inside the monarchy, what sort of universe truly was Meghan Markle living in? But back to the present day. You see, in New York City, things were not going to plan. And while, of course, as I pointed out in a previous video, Time magazine basically wanted Prince Harry there, he's part of the deal. She doesn't really want him there because the spotlight's not on her. When she got out of the car, he was invisible. This was her moment. The imaginary fans, and of course the hug to the assistant, and it's all played for the cameras. But let me get back to the pivotal point about the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. You see, at that royal wedding, which was equally fascinating, was the fact that, you see, they had no idea really whether, the Duchess of Cambridge and the Duke of Cambridge at the time were fans. They had no idea. Now, what was equally fascinating is that they were told by an excellent source to make sure, if at all possible, you get a picture with the Duchess of Cambridge, because this was a long-term game plan. You see, if they could get a picture with Catherine, it would sort of back up the story, wouldn't it, for Harry, that she was a devoted fan, loved the cast, couldn't believe that she was meeting them. Well, she did meet them, but the problem is she got no idea who they were. And they were very polite. The two people that had met her, there was certainly no picture of them all together. Even though they desperately wanted to try and get one, it was not the right time. So, according to the source that was there, Catherine, as ever, polite, friendly, all of that sort of stuff. But she truly had no idea who they were. They said who they were, and she said, nice to meet you. So if she was such a devoted fan, as Harry had pointed out, wouldn't she have relished the opportunity to get a group picture, maybe with just the ladies of the cast of Suits? It never happened. And the girls at Suits know it never happened. And apparently, according to them, they had no idea that Catherine truly was a fan of the show until this was put out into the ether, as it were. And it goes back to what I was saying at the start of the video. The stories that they claim that they've come up with never really shape up to be true. Like the catastrophic New York car chase. That's never mentioned now, and nobody's allowed to mention it because, quite frankly, it never happened. They tried to make it happen, and it failed. But as we pick apart the things that, of course, have gone wrong so far this year, I'd love to know what you think to exactly how it's gone wrong, and more importantly, how could they ever put it right? Let me explain. I love those sort of events like the Time 100 because they're so sycophantic, and it's really about one thing. It's about sponsorship and money. If you say to any celebrity, we'll give you an award if you turn up, chances are they will turn up, unless they're very well noted and they don't necessarily need the money or indeed the exposure. You know what I'm saying? But most of them will turn up because they just want to be noticed. It's part and parcel of their deal. I mentioned this before, way back in 1947. The Daily Mail had at the Savoy Hotel their big movie awards, and they were going to give it to a wonderful actress called Margaret Lockwood. And when she couldn't make it, they decided, well, you are now not the most popular female artist in 1947, but your rival is Patricia Rock. Patricia Rock could turn up and pick up the award. That's what it's about, money. And money, of course, is what Meghan Markle truly loves. She's money obsessed. She likes the idea of making more money and becoming a billionaire. Now, where it gets interesting with the Time magazine thing is, clearly this was her chance to sit down with somebody and say, this is where I am with my brand. Correct all the negative social media PR that she claims not to be part of. Meghan Markle has multiple accounts that she looks at and her team look at on a regular basis to see where she is. By that, I mean she monitors what she thinks is the right thing, As you've noted, even though she's just appeared at the Time 100 magazine event, basically she's been checking by the hour to see if her Instagram account has risen up anymore. And it hasn't. It's had no knock-on effect whatsoever. This is truly catastrophic if you are Meghan Markle, because it's about getting people to watch and look at your brand. Last weekend, for instance, we were treated to Easter ducks, miraculously. You see how this is so contrived, and that's the problem. Everything that she's putting together is clearly not working out. But at the start of the year, as she literally got into the sand and wrote 2025, she could have had no idea just how badly things are going to fall apart. And the bigger picture now is the relationship between herself and her husband. And you'll notice she never refers to him in his title. It's my husband, my partner. Very much they are a unit and they are one. Nothing wrong with that. that actually, if she wanted to be kinder, she could refer to him in his title, which would give it far more clout. But that is exactly the problem in the relationship. She, even in her darkest moments, knows that she's nothing without Prince Harry. That's the reason why he has to tag along, like the bagman. That's why he has to come over to London to try and get security, because Meghan's apparently not so safe. Behind the scenes at the Time 100, there were lots of big names there. Not terrifically big names, because consequently there aren't that really many left. But nobody had as big a motorcade as Meghan Markle. Nobody. The two outriders with the drivers in, Meghan and then another car. People were laughing openly behind the scenes because it's kind of, who are you? What is the point? The only interview that Meghan would agree to was that on the stage. She didn't want to meet the media. There was no real sort of red carpet, but there were one or two people milling around. But everything has to be controlled in the world of Meghan. And what she decided was she was going to give her best to the people on the stage. But as I told you, every question was literally told in advance. She knew exactly the direction of travel. There were no surprises in there. She knew they were going to mention the flower sprinkles. She knew they were going to mention the podcast. She got the name of the company in, Lemonada. And apparently, Meghan, and I have to say this as ever allegedly, is teetering on the idea of possibly investing in that company. Hence the reason she mentioned it. You understand? But there was no mention at all of the failure of American Riviera Orchard. That couldn't be brought up. That would be seen as negative. There were no negatives in this particular chat. The CEO or interviewer couldn't have been more gushing. She couldn't have been kinder. But what you were looking at was a baseless level of failure. And Meghan really knows that, even if the people around her are not being very truthful. But the bigger problem actually started just before she arrived in New York. Meghan was apparently absolutely distraught that this story came to light, all about her very big first adventure with the streaming giant Netflix. She had hoped to turn Pearl into this big, long-running series. Do you know the cartoon Arthur? Very similar to that in many respects. That was the idea. That was the thing that she was going to come up with. And of course now she's been accused of taking the idea of somebody else, ripping off another book. And consequently, this was going to be part and parcel of a very minor chat of a stumbling block. But once that came out, all of that had to be scrapped. Nobody could mention that particular failure. Now, it's a little bit like, of course, her podcast. I love the way the woman said, you've got so many things going on, without actually saying none of them are successful. And what happened there was, even though the podcast is in its second or third episode, it's bombed. It's not rating at all. Many suggest that Spotify were in fact right. They're talentless grifters who don't really put the work in, who can't get the relevant people to come on board. Meghan's not a particularly good interviewer because she tells stories about herself. She doesn't exactly get to the core of what people want to know, which is, how did you found your business? She's nice and amiable and there's all but you don't get anything. And what people want when they go on a business podcast, particularly if you're being interviewed, is to be able to tell your story, to inspire others. What we get are things like, oh, they love to see Auntie Katie and I've got a medical issue too. There's nothing of any true substance. And this is now going to be the bigger problem as Harry and Meghan move forward. They're having serious issues behind the scenes. Harry is perpetually bored in his life out in California. He has nothing to do all day. The meetings that you talked about with Drew Barrymore went, oh yeah, how's your meeting going at lunchtime? His meetings are just lawyers. There's no real concrete thing. The Invictus Games coming up in Birmingham in 2 years' time or whatever, that's a long way off, and that's going to be whether Birmingham over here, the United Kingdom, can stump up the money, because money's getting even tighter. So Harry's old sort of raison d'etre for being out in California is to simply support his wife, Meghan Markle. It's a role that she likes, but it's a role ultimately that could break the couple too. Let me explain. The ongoing problems, of course, if you are Harry and Meghan, is not just simply the difficulties in your personal relationship, but how you're presenting yourself in public. And what we've seen more and more of late is Meghan taking the lead. And a lot of people are shocked by this, but of course the insiders know the true story. Harry is more than happy to have someone take the lead. It's as simple as that. He quite likes being directed around. As I said, he would be more than happy to be a stay-at-home dad. Let Meghan go out and earn the bucks. The problem is she can't earn the bucks without him. He always has to be included in the invite. And this is now going to be an ongoing problem for them both, because as we saw with the time situation, without him turning up next to her, they're not truly interested. He got most of the headlines, and even she must be aware of it. Of course, the Instagram post only featured him twice. Of course, the rest of the time, it's all about what an achievement it was for Meghan, even though she didn't necessarily make the cut. But as I said, the problem that they have now, which is a huge problem for them both, is the ongoing battering in the media eye. And more so with a forthcoming book due out, a follow-up to the best-selling, international best-selling, I might point out, Revenge by the author Tom Bower. He was recently spotted at Invictus and no doubt taking copious notes down. But you see, for Harry and Meghan, this has been very problematic. In fact, you will note that Mr. Bower has never received any legal recourse for Revenge. And this is because Meghan Markle, according to that very good source, has basically said, leave it, it's not worth the battle. The true story is, according to insiders, is that Meghan knows that certain things could come out that she doesn't want. And if you think about it, a lot of the detail is incredibly crystal clear. This is where Meghan has another big problem, because the insiders tell me that she wouldn't mind having her own version of Spare, her time in the spotlight since coming to the fore, literally, after leaving Suits and marrying inside the British monarchy. But there's a problem. It's a simple problem. The bottom line is it's a problem of her own doing. You see, truly, Meghan could not stick to the story. And the people that want Meghan's story really just want the one story. They want the story about her life. Previously, what did she get up to before she landed her big break in Suits? More about her first marriage. And of course, anecdotes about our late and brilliant monarch, Queen Elizabeth. After all, Queen Elizabeth did bend over backwards to allow her into the family, Christmas, on the royal train, and no doubt there would be a few gems in there. But you see, Meghan wants to present her story her way, as one can imagine. And the bigger issue, if you are doing that, let's not forget, is, as I've said to you before, when celebrities do books like that, well, they need to be sure that they're legally watertight. This was the problem with Spare. As we've now seen, Harry's backtracked on many of the stories, and according to sources, has many regrets, because clearly he didn't plan to include as much in. He didn't understand, of course, that at any given moment the late Queen could pass, and he thought for a while at least there could be something a little bit longer in there. As we were told, according to that, he was planning a book after the demise of the Queen. Now, many people tell me that he realises what a mistake it was, hence the reason his lacklustre approach to the paperback edition. As for Meghan, it's a bigger picture. All she really cares about is the deal, the money that could be on offer. But they're not really that interested, because they know that Meghan's story, and she's not willing to share anything as a sort of synopsis to tease the potential publisher. No, you get that if you cough up the money, you understand. But what can she possibly tell that isn't already out there? And won't this literally be just simply a book of contradiction? When you think every story that she's put out so far, very quickly people rip it apart, whether it be ex-friends or indeed the media that were actually present. Everything from, the fact that they were followed in terrible situations on their big tour in South Africa, torn apart afterwards. So it's difficult for a publisher to think this is a surefire winner. The reason why Harry got so much money is he's a genuine member of the British monarchy. So consequently, just to get his name on the front cover, agreeing with him to appear at least and promote, well, that was something. Now, Tom Bower's book promises to be very sensationalised. Naturally, that's exactly what he excels in, an excellent writer that does a lot of thorough research. And according to sources, both Meghan and Harry are very concerned about how this will play out with their brand. After all, this was supposed to be the year that everything went their way. And consequently, when you look at it now, 2025 could not have got off, many people suggest, to a worse start. And as this edges towards, completion, And of course, all those little gems that will be dropped around the media at any given point, just as Meghan's desperately trying to get as the Ever brand going. Well, she's concerned, but there's nothing she can do because, as she previously pointed out, if they just leave it, it will dust over. But of course, many people realise it doesn't dust over, including Prince. It couldn't have got any worse for Harry and Meghan, and we're literally only in April. Well, there was a bigger slapdown. Now, as we know, over in Rome, of course, the Prince of Wales, Prince William, is there to represent His Majesty the King at the funeral of Pope Francis. And of course, a very solemn occasion, and really a really sort of milestone in his development, whatever people think. People did ask, why did His Majesty the King not attend? Well, they don't. The bottom line is that in this instance, and this was really a precedent set by the late Queen Elizabeth, it would be the person below her, and that would be, of course, in this situation, the Prince of Wales, Prince William. But when you look at that particular story, just that alone, there we have Prince William, literally with all the heads of state. And over in California, in Beverly Hills, what we have is the former well-known as Prince Harry attending a Legends of Aviation Awards dinner. Now, what's interesting here is, as you know, he received that award alongside a friend of his late mother's, John Travolta, the superstar actor, and on this occasion, Morgan Freeman and Kurt Russell. Now, many people were suggesting, why is he attended, and suddenly why is this alone? Well, this isn't really for Meghan, it's not where she sees her brand, you understand. Harry seemed happy to attend, and more importantly, there he was alone. Now, many people are suggesting that this is rather a lucrative, shall we say, appointment for him. It could be expenses, there could be a fee, or simply he could be doing it because he wants the profile. You see, that was another problem at the start, really, of their adventure back in 2025. A couple of weeks ago now, the paparazzi decided that, in fact, Meghan and Harry were not as lucrative as they should be. I mean, the difficulty that you have with that situation, and it's hard to stress how important this is, Harry and Meghan have really wiped away a window of opportunity by basically saying they don't want to deal with the tabloids and putting out a list of the newspapers, magazines, etc. they would deal with. This meant, of course, that, well, for a while, they were hot property. But then once they decided to control the pictures that they were putting out to the media, well, the media got very quickly bored, as they did, for instance, on the Colombia tour and the Nigerian tour. They don't like to be controlled, and more importantly, they know it's just a PR puff piece. Now, Harry knows exactly how the media and the paparazzis work. So does Meghan Markle. All despite the fact that she claimed in that interview with Oprah Winfrey that they didn't have tabloids over in America. You get the picture. And so while their star falls on a huge level, and it truly is, they've now got to decide how to pull that back. How could they possibly win the media? Now, one idea really was recently to find out exactly why Hollywood has turned against them. Well, Hollywood has not turned against them. They've simply not delivered a product that Hollywood would be interested in. All eyes, of course, were on, as ever, with Love Meghan, but that's failed to make a juggernaut. And let's not forget, of course, her podcast is really struggling. So they're literally at a crossroads, not just professionally, but personally too. And the bigger picture for them now is, how do they navigate their way around it? On top of all of that, Harry undertaking these sort of, dinners, speeches, whatever, alone, only really puts a bigger splinter in how people see them. Without him, they're not interested. Even with him, that particular story failed to make a dent. And what I've been told behind the scenes is, it's very perilous times. Meghan, seemingly, doesn't see a problem. Harry, though, knows only too well how difficult the world of celebrity can be. Meghan believes all you need is one big hit and people will come back and forgive you. She's even quite willing, and I've been told this from an excellent source, to possibly undertake a UK interview with, of course, agreed questions in advance and the right show. No doubt via satellite or whatever. She certainly wouldn't be coming back. But as they've pointed out to her, by being so disinterested in the UK, you're potentially losing a big sales market. Meghan believes that she's more powerful than that. Her issue now is, can these two truly glue themselves back together? Or is it well and truly over? For public faces, of course, people suggest naturally they'll stay together. Harry's very devoted to Meghan, there's no two ways about that. But as we saw that recent launch in New York, climbing out of the car, Meghan really isn't as devoted as she likes to claim while on stage. Why would you treat your partner, your supporter, and the person that's literally given up everything from their life to support yours so badly in public? You know what they say? A picture says 1,000 words, and that's exactly what Meghan Markle wanted it to do. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.